Welcome, all friends, to this Deep Colonisation Recovery Circles Practicing Transition session. After 15 years of transition movement, there is knowledge, skills, and wisdom to share. My name is Anaí Beatriz from Chile, and I'm part of the Practising Transition team. And we're willing to share with you this campaign that intends to share broadly all these practices, wisdom, and knowledge that we have been harvesting through all these years. And today, I'm super happy to present my friend and my collaborator also in the Inner Transition Circle for more than 3 years now, Eva Schonveld. It's not an easy word to name in Spanish speakers. Eva has been part of Inner Transition and an elder since many years and is a process designer and facilitator. She's currently working with Grassroots to Global, developing citizen-led power with assemblies processes, and had been together with the transition movement in Scotland and beyond for many years. And it's a pleasure for us to share this space of healing together. Has been a healing space for years in the way we collaborate within and what we share with others. We are super happy to share broadly how to be together in our diversities. So Eva, we're with you now. Welcome.
Thank you very much, and welcome everybody. It's lovely to see you. Thank you for coming to this session. So yeah, before we dive into learning a bit more about this process that I developed alongside a bunch of other people, I thought it might be nice for us just to take a moment to land. You're all probably not feeling quite as nervous as I am, but I'm feeling a little nervous, facing a wall of faces here. And I think it's always good. It's good to to just sort of come out of the habit of being in the face of the laptop or the computer and seeing all the little Zoom boxes, and maybe just pull ourselves back as much as we would like to go away from the screen and into our own space. And if closing your eyes helps to come into your own space, then do that, or just look at something in your room or out of the window that you like to look at, that's beautiful to you. And maybe notice your breath coming in and out. And the weight of your body. So just noticing how you're feeling today, how your day's been, how you're feeling showing up to this session. Notice if your body's needing anything, if you need to move. Pardon. If you want to stretch. If you suddenly feel you would like your camera off or on. And I really invite you to take care of yourself and your needs, and to really pay attention to the cues your body's giving you during this session. I've been learning a lot recently about how incredibly wise our bodies are, how much information they can give to us if we're open to that. And for me, that's really part of decolonizing, is getting back in touch with my body as a source of wisdom. Not just as a thing that can carry me around and process my food, but as my special, unique way of being in the world. So with a last little nod of thanks to our bodies, when you're ready to come back in connection with the screen, please do. And please just be aware of how close or far you want to be from this funny box that controls so much of our lives. So yeah, the first thing to say is it's not really a note of caution, just an observation that this is quite difficult work, this recovery from colonization, and we'll dig a bit into what that might be for each of us. It really requires us to be willing to look deep inside of ourselves. That's the deep bit, means it's in here as well as out there. So to be open to seeing stuff that goes on inside of us, some of which may not be very comfortable, we may not like very much, to be open to growing and changing. So it's serious work. It can be funny, but it can also be painful, and it could be joyful. It's moving towards a really different way of being human than the one that we've grown up with. And so one of the really important sort of first principles of this work is that there needs to be an understanding, an agreement between us that this is what we're undertaking together. We can dip our toes in gently, but it's the same sea. It's a sea of really radical transformation that needs to happen inside of ourselves and in all parts of our lives. So, yeah. Yeah, so that's the warning. What we're doing here is hopefully not uncomfortable sort of splicing together of me trying to teach you how to do this and us also doing it. So learning by doing. And one of the things that means is that we will be more pressed for time than we would in an ordinary session when we're actually doing it. I really like to have enough time so that people can share for as long as they want to when we work in the circle. But we will be probably keeping time and rounding you up. So just so you know that we all need to navigate this kind of slightly sort of unusual difference between doing a deep, heartfelt practice and learning about it with a time limit. So normally we would choose as a group what topic to look at, but we have already decided it's going to be education, and that's to save time. And also because education is in, I think, for most people, and there will be exceptions, a kind of sweet spot of it being somewhere where we probably have quite strong feelings, but we're probably not feeling absolutely devastated. So that it gives us material to work with without being really, really super triggering. And yeah, I hope that's the case for everybody here. And obviously, if there are big triggers for you, then please take care. Please only go as far into things as you want to. We normally would do this with 10 people max in a circle, and we'd normally be working over several weeks, and each week we would look at a different topic, and I'll go into those in a minute. So this time it's a one-off. We're learning. We'll break into smaller groups, and the people who stay with me in the main room will be recorded so that we can use this as a teaching recording for later. And normally we would have 3 full rounds of people sharing in 3 different ways. I will dig into that later. This time we have 2, and one is going to be written, and then everyone will come back for a popcorn sharing. So I hope that this isn't too many kind of little details, but I'm hoping it will fall into place as we go. So the background to this is that I was part of a group during COP26, which was in Glasgow. We were creating a an event to include some Indigenous people and to welcome them to Scotland and to share a whole bunch of different things that we wanted to share. And our planning group in our first session did a check-in, and we decided to check in on what in our lives felt like it was colonized. And it was a huge question, and there was a lot to say, and it was incredibly interesting and juicy and affecting. So we decided we would do it again the next week. And in fact, every week we met, we checked in that way, and we started picking areas of our lives to look at how that part of our life had been colonized. So that's where this process developed from. It was quite organic. And then I started running circles afterwards just for this, because I found it so incredibly interesting and rewarding. Yeah. The deep colonization recovery, the recovery bit comes from and is inspired by the recovery movement, which is a international movement for people who are getting over, who are processing addiction of one kind or another. And in many ways, the kind of colonization that we have can act a bit like an addiction, and it is something that we need individually and collectively to recover from. And most of the practice that we do happens in circles. So I've been talking about rounds. We use this container of a circle where you know where you're going to speak. Now, if we were sitting in a real circle, we would know, because we would go around each person. But in an online circle, we take a list of names fairly randomly, and that's the circle that we go around in. So you know when you're going to speak. What I find with this is that it builds a huge amount of safety. Normally, the first round is a little bit more surface level. The second one's a bit deeper, and the third one can be very deep. And it depends on the people, and it depends on the topic. But there's something about speaking round in circle, and in particular with the instructions that we use, which people in your breakout room will tell you, that that enable a lot of safety to be built, even by a group of people who don't really know each other that well, and a real sense of depth. So we're really creating space in this circle to reflect on how growing up with decolonization, with colonization of one sort or another, how it's impacted on us. And I'm really aware that that word is woefully inadequate. I've not been able to find a word that works better. So we could talk about capitalism, we could talk about patriarchy, we could talk about class structure or white supremacy or ableism, the military-industrial complex, domination, the Western mindset, denial of trauma. All of these things work together and more to create the kind of atmosphere that most of us have grown up in. And it's the legacy of that, all of that we're talking about in these circles. And for me, that's what colonization is. It's an attempt to find a word to talk about the whole crap pile of stuff that we've inherited from parents who themselves have been traumatized over generations and generations, and who have created structures that are traumatized and traumatizing. So that explains the word. And we're creating a circle to start to dig into that together. So to have a little time to speak about our own experience, which we may not have explored very much. In the first circle, we may not have a huge amount to say, or we may think that we don't have a huge amount to say. Sometimes a lot more comes out. But we spend much more time listening to other people. And so another thing that we get from these circles is how different our experiences are, and sometimes how similar. So so that's the underlying aim. And now I want to just share my screen quickly. Oh, hang on. I got to get it on the right page, because I can't navigate once I've shared my screen. So these are some of the topics that we might work with in a circle. Quite often, and particularly once a group have got to know the process and have got to know one another, other things come up, new things that we haven't thought of, or something that occurred to you when you were in the bath or going shopping, and people bring something else. So these are just some ideas to get people started. You can look at pretty much anything. Oops, sorry. Cocking this up. And then we take it in turns. So we speak in this round, and we do 3 times around the circle. The first round is what I think about the colonization. So in this case for us, it's about what I think about how my experience of education has been colonized. And the reason we do thinking first is because it's often where we are most comfortable going. We've been taught that thinking is safe, and that sharing our thoughts is okay. So for many of us, that's a safer place to start, although not for everybody. The second round is what I feel about the colonization. And the third round, this is the one that we're doing in writing, this time in our teaching session. What next small, wise step in myself or in the wider world am I going to take to address the colonization? So that could be something really small and inner that only I would ever know about. Or it might be that I'm going to start a whole new project that I've been thinking about. And so, or anything in between. Hang on, I've just got to find out what I'm saying next. All right. Just want to check the time. Okay, yeah, I need to round up. So yeah, so the really what we're doing with these circles is creating a safe space, building relationship, and using them as a safe space to practice this process of recovering from colonization. And the idea is that over time, we will be able to take that out into spaces that aren't so safe. So we may be able to bring challenge to things that are happening in other spaces that we weren't able to before we started this process. And so the sense is that this is a way, sort of inner-led way of making social change. Right. I think that's all I want to say at the moment. And I'm hoping that we now have breakout groups. So if anybody is willing, and I really hope that some of you are, to stay with me in this room and be recorded doing this process, I would appreciate that. If there's anybody who really doesn't want to, please put your name in the chat or just say yes in the chat. And Esther, who's making our breakouts, will make sure that you go into one of the breakouts. Otherwise, we'll just do it in an arbitrary fashion. Welcome.
Thank you.
So, right, so breakouts. So what we're going to be doing is, as I described, going round in the order that Esther will write for us, talking about our thoughts for the first round, our feelings for the second round, and then writing down our thoughts about what we might do in the third round on how our experience of education has been colonized. Or maybe we don't think it has. This is a free conversation. You don't have to come up with any goods. But I wanted to tell you the instructions that we use for the rounds, because I have found them incredibly helpful. And what I'll do is I will put them in the chat as well, so that you can see them. Oh, thank you. Thanks, Esther. Oops, hang on. So those are to listen from the heart. So, which is maybe a funny one to start with, because it's not something we normally think of. But listening from our heart is really just listening for the humanity of each person who's speaking. So someone may say something that you don't understand or that you don't agree with, but you're still trying to hear them as a full human being. And when you're speaking, it's really nice to know that that's how you're being listened to by the other people who are speaking. When you're speaking, speak from the heart. So say whatever is true for you in that moment, with space for vulnerability, with space for not knowing. And try not to plan what you're going to say. Just let it come. You may not know immediately what you want to say, and it's okay to be quiet as well. Try to really focus on what it is that you want to say, and try not to get spun off into digressions and storytelling, although it's very easy to do, but try to keep yourself to the point. Honor your truth. So say whatever it is that you want to say, and don't share when you're not ready to. Speak only for yourself. So try not to refer to what other people have said, because it may be that you've picked it up wrong. And it can be a sort of a contentious thing for people, and we're trying to avoid that. So if somebody's affected you, then talk about how you've been affected, for sure, but not necessarily about what you think that other person meant. Be conscious of your breath. So, and that's really for your whole body. Just try to stay as much as you can in touch with your body and what it's telling you. And listen to your needs. So if you need to look after yourself in one way or another during the session, then please just give yourself that permission. You don't need to ask permission. So we will have about 2 minutes each. I'm going to time this more tightly than I might otherwise. So when your 2 minutes is up, I will go like that. And this doesn't mean you have to stop now. It means, can you round up, please? So you don't have to stop bang on, but be really aware that you need to round up what you're saying. And then we will go around in a second round and see where we are at with time by then. I am really, really bad at mental arithmetic, and I may need to ask for help just on how much time we've got left. Are there any questions, or have we all got that? No? Okay. So who's first to speak? Me. Okay. So I'm going to model. So timing. What I think about how my education was colonized. And when I think about colonization, it's all of those things. It's the capitalism, the domination, the top down. And there's so much of that when you're little. So I think, yeah, there's just a huge, huge, huge amount for me when I think about my education. I think about being shamed for not knowing, so not being allowed to take my own time to learn the things that I was there to learn. Not really having a choice about what I was there to learn. So just, being forced, really, just my whole experience, particularly primary school, was just being forced through one thing after another, without a sense of connection, without a sense of whether it was important, whether I'd understood or not. It was really just whether I was able to come up with the answers. So I think it's that kind of that top-down what you think doesn't really matter, what you want doesn't really matter. All I'm interested in is in you being quiet and sitting still and doing what you're told and coming up with the right answers. And basically that's all you are to me, I think, is having that kind of relationship with most of my teachers. Yeah, so that's my that's my 2 minutes. And also I'm feeling quite a lot of feelings, so waiting for the next round. So I'm passing to Heather.
So I was born in Kenya and sent to boarding school in England, which certainly I had no choice in, and it was the done thing. So it kind of just felt sent away is what I've got, and there was no comfort in the school at all whatsoever. There was no kind of no nurturing about, because there were some kids were kind of 5 and 6 years old and totally on their own, where their parents lived abroad, and it was so strict on kind of the right uniforms and having, even down to the underwear, you had to wear 2 pairs of knickers, one white and one grey in the winter. It was kind of that rigid of being looking the part, so that the school was always not let down in front of the public. So there was kind of a restriction. As for the actually kind of lost and disassociated, so it was kind of just felt I was on the machine to kind of, you just have to fit in, get on and survive in whatever way was possible. So and it was not helped by my parents not listening to us about what we said about the school. So yeah, so kind of carrying a lot of trauma still from those days. Yeah. So I'll pass on to Kit.
Yes. I grew up in rural Australia. I live in Sydney. And moving from country life to primary school was a very interesting process. Catching the school bus along a country road, which had children from all different class backgrounds and religious backgrounds. That was my first experience of difference, because, of course, living rural, your social world is your family. I grew up on a sheep property, a well-off family. So, and we were on that school bus, we were somehow, I don't know the message, it was conveyed, encouraged not to talk to children from other schools and other class backgrounds. In fact, there were 2 children on that bus who worked on our property, and we weren't allowed to talk to them. So I spent a lot of my reflective and therapeutic processes now thinking about this education in class. Yeah, and that was, I went to a Presbyterian school in the nearest town, which was 20 miles away. Very timid. And then later in high school, I went to boarding school, which was very difficult. I was very shy, very isolated, and a year younger from my classmates. So yeah, it was a lonely time. And yeah, okay. Just needing to find the list again. Need to pass it on to Michelle.
Sorry, I've got that many windows open on my screen. I couldn't find my unmute button. Yeah. So I have been thinking about this. Certainly at the end of primary school and during the secondary school, I was sort of top of the class and everything. And good enough at the top of primary school to have gone to, and this makes sense to anyone who's not from the UK, but to have gone to a grammar school, you had to pass an exam called the 11 plus to decide whether you went to grammar school if you passed it, or just the basic school or comprehensive school as I ended up. So I did pass my 11 plus, and I could have gone to grammar school, and therefore could have got all the sort of good quality input that would have then got me into university. But I'm trying to think where the colonized. So, but no others in my family had ever got that far in school. And so to have sent me to grammar school would have meant 2 buses each way travelling to a so-called, this is my parents' language, a rough side of Birmingham, which for them meant lots of immigrants and undesirables. So there's some colonisation, I think, for them. So I didn't, because they couldn't afford to send me on the bus, but also worried and that comes from their own sort of trauma, I guess, in the past. So I ended up at this sort of comprehensive school, but I still was clever enough to go to university, but didn't, because I didn't realise my potential there, basically. So I'm trying to think. So I think summarising it, I think it's to do with class, that the colonising things are class, economics, and the anxiety of my own parents, which comes from their own trauma probably and their own experience of colonisation, maybe.
So I'm not sure if Natalie's there. Oh, yes, you are. You were just very still. Thought you might have been a photograph.
Yeah, sorry, I couldn't unmute myself. Yeah, I am here, moving and alive. Apologies in case I get interrupted, hopefully not. I grew up in Poland. I live in the UK now, but I grew up in Poland. And my experience of education was that I was brought up to win, to be the best, to be compared to other kids. I was for some time top of the class. And so I was most of the time better than other people, other students, and received a lot of praise from teachers and from parents for that. And that created this fake persona in me that I struggle till today. I'm unpacking it right now, of kind of, yeah, feeling special, but from a very egoic point of view, and kind of entitled also. But funny enough, I did well in school up to a certain point. Then I started getting depressed, feeling ill, and I was not doing well anymore. And I went to university, but I didn't finish because of the illness. Like, all this greatness started falling apart. And I guess at school, I was never taught how to deal with failure. And as we know, life has a lot of failure in it. I was lucky, interestingly enough, when I trained a bit like as a UX designer. So I trained a little bit in tech. In technology, in the industry, failure is celebrated almost. Like, they understand that you need to fail to move forward. So I'm grateful that I had that experience where I could learn a little bit about how to handle failure.
Natalie,
yeah.
I'm sorry to interrupt. I think you maybe couldn't see me on your phone rounding up, but you're 2 minutes.
That's the sign. Yeah, sure.
Yeah. No worries. Thank you very much.
Thank
and
you.
I think it's Danielle now.
Hi, thank you. Well, I feel like I have so much to say. So I hope that something meaningful will come. So how was my education colonized? I think it's hard for me to, it's so much, because I really today, from this perspective that I have today, think my education was mostly a colonizing like process, you know. It was mostly about that. It's hard for me right now to connect like also with the parts that I'm sure that there were also many good parts of it. I think it was colonized both in the content and in the form. So the contents that I was learning, I think, like the kind of knowledge that I was getting, a lot of things that today I think are so important were missing. And many things that today, yeah, many things, like the education did not give answer my deep biological or human needs, like my spiritual need, my sense of personal worth. It was kind of like addressing other things, and those really basic needs were not addressed. And it was very much top down. And I think the biggest way it colonized me was that it really planted this seed of doubt in me in relation to my own intuition and like my own insight. And it was just so much. I learned that I have to justify my right to speak. And it's like all of the attention and the energy around education, also later in my life, was all concentrated on this, or like gaining the right to speak. And like, do I know enough? Did I learn enough? Do I have the right to speak? I kind of lost belief in this right. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. I believe it's my turn. I'm digesting everything that's been shared and connecting with my own experience. And I realize that it's now difficult to me to think and not to feel. I'm really feeling more than thinking. And I'm resonating with a lot of things that I've heard. It's interesting that the first thing that comes to my mind, it's a prison-like image. Like, the school I went to was very big. There was a lot of students, a lot of people working there, and it looked like a sort of like a castle. It was a religious place. So there was a church and a lot of, how do you say that? In Spanish is barrotes, like it felt like a prison. And if you were late, you had to enter by a different door. So there was a woman checking who was late, and you needed to say, like, it was humiliating. You couldn't enter by the front door. And there's this sense of, yeah, everything needed to be so organized. I needed to fit into the schedule and the forms, the procedures, and behave in a good way, as somebody mentioned. And there's this feeling of guilt and competition, needing to perform super well. And if I wasn't performing well, I could be punished. But if I wasn't performing well, there was no reward. Like, oh, it's the normal thing to be doing. You need to perform super well. And if you don't, then you are punished. And I just remembered a particular teacher, a woman who was always angry, who was throwing things at students when she was angry, when she was mad, just would throw something, a pen or something to somebody's head. And yeah, I'm connecting a lot with that, this sense of you can't escape it. And you need to be like everybody else, or like you are being asked to, yeah, and an imposition on a very vulnerable being. Yeah. Thank you.
Oh, thank you so much, everybody. And I'm looking at the time and seeing we're really short on time. We've got just over a minute each left, which feels like it's not even really enough to lift the lid on on how we may be feeling. So I really apologize, and hope that maybe we can just like touch in, and because we will need to finish. We need to do a little bit of, we can run a little bit into the writing and maybe just leave ourselves a couple of minutes to write the third round. But yeah, so apologies that the timing didn't work quite as I'd hoped. But I will take my turn. Yeah, it was interesting because when I was speaking my own experience, I was in touch with quite a lot of rage. I just felt so angry, but mostly what I felt hearing you guys speak is grief. It's just a real sadness that that this is what's happened to us, and that this is what's happening to kids now. It's the education system has not changed very much. I think it has changed a bit, but it's not changed a huge amount. And this kind of like pressure to do well in a particular way is all still there. So yeah, I feel, yeah, my default feeling about the world is a fast cycling grief and rage, and I just managed to feel one of them, and then the other one starts coming up, and I cycle round and round. So I'm in my usual grief rage spiral. And I would stop there and pass to Heather.
Thanks. Privileged upbringing of private school, and I didn't make the best of it, and I hated it, and I should have been more grateful. And so there's kind of this thing of personal attack and external attack, that the fact I was put in this position, and that's yeah, kind of just not met the guilt of having this privilege and not actually using it to the best, and carrying that. So I passed to Kit.
Yes, knowing it was not the right place to be in a world that was actually supposed to be about fairness and justice, I went into a decline and became anorexic and suicidal. So it was, yeah, a very complex situation, and not able to talk to family about it because it was actually what my mother wanted. She wanted us to go to a boarding school that was considered to have some status about it. That'll do, thank you. So, Michelle.
Thank you. I think my feelings chewing over it are anger towards my mum in particular for her anxiety around my travel arrangements. And I'm full of blame for her, and I think, yeah. So, yeah, anger really at my mum for that she allowed her anxiety to get in the way of my flourishing, I guess, educationally. Yeah, I think that's probably enough said. Danielle next, maybe. Sorry.
Yeah, I have a lot of emotions. I think a lot of anger. For like the humiliation and what I experience as difficulty still today. So like anger for the one that caused it. Sadness for like what I could have been if my creativity and my knowledge would have been embraced and not like questioned. Big sadness for that. And also a big guilt for yeah, also not succeeding and not living up to the educational expectations that I had of myself and that other people had of me. So that's also, someone also said that, and I really resonate with that somehow. Thank you.
Thank you. Could go to Natalia now.
Yep.
Thank you.
Thank you. So, for me, interestingly, I don't feel that much at the moment, because I think I'm still in a process of denial. Is that like, oh, did it really happen? No. And if there is a feeling, I think at the moment it's shock. Like, oh, did it happen? And it made me into, as I said, created this fake idea about myself. And now I have to spend time. And for a long time, I thought that this persona is real, but it's not. And now I have to take it apart. And what do I do now? So I think there is still a lot of denial. But when I pass through it, yeah, there is shock as to what happened. How come? Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. Grief is one, yeah, deep grief here, and sadness, and a feeling of, maybe it's somehow grief and anger as well, and a sense of betrayal, of I'm being used, I have been used, and I've been transformed into a reproduction tool, like to reproduce this colonialism. And that frustrates me a lot when I see that I'm reproducing some patterns, and they made it they made it, and now it feels very weird and frustrating. And also there's a part of me that feels rebellious and wants to tear out like the concrete floors of the patios of the playgrounds in schools. Like I want to plant gardens there. I want to go to schools and transform the whole thing. Like there's a part of me who feels like, let's change that. Yeah.
Thank you so much, people, and thank you so much for doing that so quickly. It feels like there was this, these kind of wells of feeling, and we were just like lifting the lid a tiny bit. But yeah, so normally, having had a really great second round where we had plenty of time to say everything we were feeling, we would move on to a third round, where we could talk about what we might want to do in the world, what change we might want to make, or what action we might want to take that in some way would address this issue for us. And maybe it's quite a nice thing that we have some quiet time to think about that. There's not a right answer. There may be several answers, or it may be that you just can't think. So please don't feel like you have to come up with anything. But we have got a few minutes now to, oh, Kit dropped. Oh, I think she was waving goodbye. Yeah, to consider what next small wise step in myself or in the wider world am I going to take to address this colonization around education. Yeah. And then we'll move back into the big room, or rather everyone else will come and join us, and we can either choose to share, we'll do popcorn. We can either choose to share then a little bit, or we can put it in the chat, but there won't be time for everybody to share in this, yes, slightly compromised teaching session. Okay, so I'm going to put my sound off, and if anyone has any questions or wants to chip in with anything, then do feel free. But otherwise, then we'll be writing until 5 past the hour. I think that's everybody. Oh, people still, yeah, coming back. Hey, it was fast. I hope that even with what felt like really quite rushed sessions, and one of the things that is really lovely to do is to have enough time for everybody to have work with a small group and have enough time for everybody to share. I hope that going through it, even if very quickly, has given you an idea of what it's like and what might be possible with this format. We're going to share my email at the end, and if you do run one of these circles, I would really love to hear about it. I had this idea that those of us who are holding it could get together and talk about it and how we do it differently, and so it carries on developing. So yeah, do let me know. But this bit is for anybody, hopefully anybody who would like to share in popcorn as an alternative to the final round. We won't have time for everyone to share. So if you don't want to speak sharing, then you're really welcome to type into the chat. Or if you don't have time, if we end up running out of time, you don't get to speak. Then put it in the chat as we're finishing off. Yeah, so the last round on what small wise step would you like to take to address this colonization in one way or another? Does anybody have something that they would like to share?
I would, Heather here. So one, it highlighted to me how much I'm still carrying from school. So it's kind of getting an exercise of where did it fail me, what's still playing out in my life now, and what qualities I got from actual, rather than just all being bad. And the other thing is I have 2 grandchildren, and I can absolutely show them different ways of learning, as well as the normal education, so that it doesn't all come from just one place, the school. So those are my steps.
I would love to share. Somehow one idea I had is to give more credit to my intuition, listen to my intuition. I don't know exactly what it means, but come to meetings like this where I think I'm being very validated, like parts of me that were colonized and that were disempowered are being validated, knowledge that is being validated. It's so valuable. And also screen a short film that I made about like the denial of about the denial of trauma in my country's history and its connection to the current political state, and thinking, okay, by screening it, I'm contributing to the decolonization of the education of at least people in the present. So this also, I love to connect this as a part of that mission. Thank you.
I also wanted to share a bit, if I could. I also feel like, you know, the experience here, I feel not like ready to run a circle like this, you know, like there's so much of myself that I'm still working on, but I don't know, maybe to some degree that's okay, but these types of things definitely seem to me like they would be very helpful to continue to, you know, touch base over time with maybe a group or something about how not only like to share where we're all at, but like how we may be continuing, you know, to have a sense of togetherness in that. As far as going from here, where I'm going, I'm probably going to try to, you know, share some of my experience here with some of my other organizing, you know, networks, trying to change things in the United States, I suppose. But you know, it's hard because people aren't on the same page, and how do you get people to feel on the same page and like they're working together towards the same goal? And like, it's a lot, right? But I think this type of experience can definitely help people understand that shared position that we're in of colonization and all that kind of entails. Yeah, I don't want to take up too much time, but yeah.
Thanks, Jared. And just to say, I came in with if you run these sessions, there's no expectation that you should be running sessions like this. It was just if you decided that you wanted to. And for Lisa and Alejandro, we're just popcorning. Any reflections, particularly on the last round that we did in writing, but also on the whole process. You're really welcome to contribute. So just anyone who wants to speak, just open your mic.
Hi. Hello, Eva. Thanks for sharing all this. What a gift. Thank you. I've been needing something like this for quite a while. I'm out in the sticks, and this just reminds me it doesn't matter where you live, you could be on the moon. Well, maybe not, but you can connect with like-minded people. And yeah, I heard the word validation and being heard. And yeah, feels so vital, so abnormal, but should be so normal to have spaces like this. And I'd love to run some routes, but then that's my part of my ADHD is like, yeah, let's just do it, new, exciting, gonna meet some needs, and then I hit all the limiting factors, and the trauma gets in the way, and I get the shame and I don't do it. So good intentions, but talking through some of that stuff is reminding me of the thing that I want to do, which is which I'm doing, which is addressing more of the layers of trauma that exist in my life and that keep getting triggered, And one of them that I did want to share, which is really beautiful, a beautiful experience, is a woman called Sarah Payton, who's an American. You may have heard of her or not. She's so anyway, she's got something called a Resonance Summit on at the moment that's free, and there's loads of workshops, and I've been to a few. Her keynote speech, which I don't know if is still available, was so beautiful. And she's talking about play and her fear of play and where that comes from. And she uses NVC and constellations work and neuroscience and trauma. She's an educator and exquisitely sensitive in how she does things. So I'm going to go and watch another episode from that summit because it's so enriching, and I need more of that beautiful, inclusive gentleness. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Lucy. Thank you, Eva, and thank you all. I want to share a little bit of our experience and my experience. And yeah, one thing is on the context. I realize, like, to start speaking of colonization and decolonization demands to say where I'm standing. And at the same time, in each context, like there is fractal, we have differences in terms of possibilities of the education regarding the social classes, at least in Chile, is huge diversity. If you have or you're not, you don't have money, how you're educated. And the breach of the difference of of distribution of income is very high in some countries. And the possibility that the power ones has to manipulate people are related also with the capacity to distinguish, and that is education. So all is kind of interrelated. If we don't have educated people, like, we can manipulate more people and keep colonizing them. And today this still happens, at least here in the south of Chile that I live, through Facebook, through social media, and the whole transformation of the Chilean constitution of the last 3 years, I think was very affected with the manipulation through social media, because people believe what they see in a very brief publishing. And this brings a lot of anger and pain in me, feeling that a lot of work is still needed to really free us as human beings and for justice to be available for everyone. And so in this side of the planet, still colonization is active through capitalism now, on the distinction of money distribution. So yeah, for me, the place we are standing is crucial to name how we relate with the colonization. And at the same time, personally, and from a privileged place in this place, I am able to travel and speak English. I am aware that we all have been colonized in all over the world many times in the history, and that is a collective wound. And for myself, next steps to make it short is to keep doing this kind of circles that for me are super healing, and hopefully without time, because when we have the 2 minutes for each, somehow when the safe and the vulnerability opens, we need to go to the time, and it's not good for me. Like, I really would like to have more free time to share, and also a container of being able to distribute time justly. And here my next steps is to keep supporting people that have not been privileged in the daily life. I live in a Mapuche land, and every time I can, I support them, driving them from one place to the other, like giving my time and my service to the ones that have been less privileged. So this is what I do. And thank you for holding this space.
We have time for another couple of people. If anybody is wondering whether they might like to speak. And if not, then we can finish early. Okay, I'm calling it. And everyone who's spoken has everyone who wants to speak has spoken. So tell me if I'm wrong. Zaida, you wanting to say something?
Yes, it's just like,
yeah, please.
This little silence made me reflect here. So many different ways of wants, so many different ways, and either if we're completely mixed as we are in Brazil, or which means being humans, or if you are, in a more straight line of what is your race or your color or your definition. And sometimes I have a feeling that, and this goes directly to my heart. Sometimes I have a feeling that we are a small group of people that are talking to each other. Like the ones that have attention on the topic are meeting and talking. And I feel like I want to scream and say, what can we do? What can we do? At the same time, this last 20 years of my life, or 30 years of my life, I was born in, I was not born, but a little later, dictator came to my country. So I was able to see so many different stages of it coming in and coming out, still with the same level of ignorance about so much. But I can see the difference. Transition, the focus on transition gave me that perspective. And still when Anaí was speaking about education, I was like, but what kind of education? Because education in my country is the worst. It's what made us ignorant. So we still have to separate education. So I'm glad for the people that didn't have education, because they are saving the land. And they are, in my country, colonizers were the ones who stayed in the land. That's how I grew up. Go talk to the colono. Colono was the one that was on the land planting and gardening. Thanks God they didn't have education, and that capitalism didn't went like directly as the dominant thing in their veins, even though they suffer nowadays. So I just want to leave with this idea of like a little tiny despair of like, what can we do to make it really spread? Like sustainability that feels like it's gaining its space. What about if it's coming along together? It's coming along just in parallel, in a hidden way. Thank you.
Thank you, Zaida. Right, well, we do need to round off. And I just really wanted to say thank you so much for coming and for throwing yourselves into this process, even though I feel like we sped you through it incredibly fast. Maybe just going through it once gives you a kind of feeling of what it's supposed to be. So yeah, huge appreciation. And we have a feedback form that if you could fill in, sooner the better, like straight after would be great. And I'm going to pass back to Anaï to close the session.
Thank you, Eva, and thank you all for being here. Now with the hat of Practicing Transition Circle and Inner Transition Circle, I want to share that we have an amazing, how you say in English, follow-up of gatherings in the coming weeks and months. Thank you very much. If you want to open your mics, say goodbye in your language. Super welcome. Muchas gracias.